I slid my water glass aside and asked Denise to split the $500 check. Bellwether glowed amber around us as her smile vanished. Evan pulled my blue card from his jacket, called me a freeloader, and pressed it to the terminal. A red message flashed. Before Denise could seize the machine, Malcolm emerged from the manager's corridor. "This transaction is declined, but that is not your largest problem, Mrs. Vale." I lifted the binder onto the table and opened it to the first number divider. In the private alcove, I spread out the bank logs, merchant records, transfer printout, and my signed fraud affidavit. 55 hours until my birthday dinner, Denise said, checking the slim gold watch on her wrist. Thursday noon light filled our Portland townhouse kitchen, turning every fingerprint on the black countertop silver. She had come over carrying no groceries, only a folder of Bellwether menu printouts. Evan stood beside the sink, nodding while she described oysters, dry-aged steak, and a bottle of wine she had apparently selected already. My card lay near the fruit bowl, where I had used it to order exhibit hardware. I picked it up and slid it into my wallet before Denise's folder could cover it. "You've planned every course," I said. Denise smiled. At 61, surprises become disappointments. My phone chimed against the counter. The notification looked ordinary. Bellwether, $23.40. I opened it, expecting some harmless explanation. Denise's left hand stopped smoothing the menu, although her face remained pleasantly blank. Evan dried his hands on a blue dish towel and said the restaurant probably required a deposit. "For a reservation I didn't make?" I asked. He glanced toward his mother before answering. "Let's not make this bigger. Mom only gets one birthday a year." Denise lifted her folder and tucked it under her arm. "A sensible wife would want her husband's mother properly celebrated," she said. The silence afterward lasted 4 seconds. I counted. I asked how much they expected the dinner to cost. Evan rubbed his thumb over his wedding band, the gesture he used before presenting an unpleasant number as a shared decision. "Probably 500, he said. "You're covering it, right? You have more room on your card." That was the first I had heard of the arrangement. Sweat gathered under my watch band. "You expect me to fund the entire meal?" I asked. Denise's gaze dropped to my phone. Evan's loyalty moved across his face before he spoke, firm and almost rehearsed. "She raised me alone, Mara. We can do this for her." Denise nodded once, as if he had answered correctly. "I need to get home," Denise said. She kissed Evan's cheek, not mine, and walked through the narrow hall. We heard the front door latch and, moments later, her car pull away toward their Pearl District condominium. Evan remained in the kitchen, folding the dish towel into precise quarters. "So now dinner spending is an interrogation?" he asked. I told him I was questioning a charge, not his mother's birthday. He exhaled through his nose. Same difference to her. On my phone I tapped the alert, opened the account, and watched the available credit figure load. It was far lower than it should have been. I scrolled past the Bellwether entry. 6 older transactions appeared beneath it, scattered across unfamiliar merchants and dates. None belonged to our utilities, my museum projects, or anything Evan and I had discussed. My throat tightened as I counted all 7 twice. Evan leaned over, but I angled the screen away. "Do you recognize those?" he asked. "No," I said. The kitchen suddenly smelled too strongly of Denise's rose perfume. At her condominium, she now knew I had noticed Bellwether. In our kitchen, I knew something worse. The restaurant charge was only the smallest one. Late Thursday afternoon, I pulled my card from my wallet and called the service number printed on its back. The representative booked me into the Rose City Community Bank branch before closing. I left Evan in our townhouse kitchen with his laptop open and drove through warm late spring rain, my palms sliding against the steering wheel. Inside the branch, frosted glass softened the fluorescent light. Leah Knox met me beside the reception desk. She was 42, with rectangular glasses and a charcoal blazer, and introduced herself as a consumer card services supervisor. "Bring the physical card and your phone," she said. "We'll compare what you received with what the account recorded." Leah led me into a consultation room, closed the door, and placed my card on a gray examination tray. I showed her the bellwether notification. She entered the account number, then stopped with both hands above the keyboard. "I need the exact date when you last changed your contact information," she said. I told her I had not changed it in more than 2 years. The printer behind her woke with a mechanical cough. Leah explained that she had previously flagged repeated profile changes on my account, but each one had passed automated authentication. She printed the statements first. 7 posted charges totaling $9,639.60. 6 of them accounted for $9,616.20. If you have ever watched a bank printer produce evidence faster than your mind could accept it, stay with this channel. These stories are for people who know that a familiar name on an account can be more frightening than a stranger's. "I authorized none of these," I said. Leah's expression changed, not surprise, but concentration. She marked every transaction while I denied it, one by one, then opened the profile history. My available credit had been consumed in sharp steps. The statements had stopped reaching my regular inbox because the delivery address had been redirected. Leah turned her monitor toward me. The replacement email contained Denise Vale's full name. Cold spread from my ribs into my arms. I read the address 3 times, looking for a misspelling that might turn it into coincidence. There was none. "That is my mother-in-law," I said. Leah wrote the relationship beside the log entry. She asked whether Denise had access to our townhouse, devices, mail, or personal records. I answered yes to the house and mail, uncertain about the rest. Denise had watered our plants during a museum installation trip. She knew Evan's phone passcode because he used the same 4 digits for years. Saying those facts aloud made them lose their harmless family shape. Leah printed the profile audit, altered email, replacement phone number, paperless delivery confirmation, and authentication timestamps. "Statements were delivered to her address electronically," she said. "I'm documenting that you dispute all 7 charges." The pages accumulated in orderly white stacks while my pulse hammered without order. Leah punched 2 holes through the statements and logs, fastened them into a bank evidence packet, and pushed it across the table to me. I held it against my chest. My card remained on the examination tray for the bank's review. Then Leah enlarged the smallest transaction and studied its merchant code. "Bellwether didn't process this as a meal or a deposit," she said. "It was a card verification charge." She tapped the date with one capped finger. "Someone was testing whether your account and identity would clear before using them for something else." Friday morning, I called the merchant number printed beside the verification charge in my evidence packet. Malcolm Price answered after 2 transfers and asked me to come before lunch. Bellwether occupied a brick corner near the Pearl District, its brass doors polished bright enough to catch the grey sky. Inside, the dining room smelled of lemon oil and yesterday's wood smoke. Malcolm met me at the host stand. He was 47, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit with no tie, and introduced himself as the general manager. When I said I disputed the charge, his fingers tightened around his pen. "Let the record show that you contacted us directly," he said. "I retained the reservation archive because that verification looked suspicious." He took me into his manager's office behind the dining room. I laid the bank packet on his desk but kept one hand over Denise's redirected email address. Malcolm signed into the reservation system, searched Bellwether's archive, and opened the booking for Saturday evening under Denise Vale's name. The payment guarantor was listed as Mara Ellis. Beneath my name were uploaded identity documents: an image of my driver's license, my billing address, and a cropped copy of a card statement. My mouth went dry. The license image had been taken on our kitchen counter. I recognized the crescent-shaped chip in the black stone behind it. I never sent any of this, I said. Malcolm looked from the screen to my face. Then someone used your identity to secure her reservation. The archive also preserved the contact number and the email used during verification. Malcolm compared them with the profile logs Leah had printed. He did not announce his conclusion, but his hands became very still. Was the table actually reserved? I asked. He confirmed it was, along with Denise's requested menu notes and instructions that the guarantor's card covered the final bill. My name appeared beneath each confirmation. Malcolm printed the merchant records, stamped the pages, and assembled them into a separate evidence packet. I need to preserve this on site, he said. He carried it to a steel cabinet in the corner, placed it inside, turned the key, and tested the locked door twice. My phone vibrated while Malcolm called Bellwether's payment processor from his desk. The screen showed a location sharing notification. Denise had checked my position through our family group. I had forgotten that Evan added her after she once claimed she felt unsafe driving alone. A second notification appeared, her location moving away from her condominium and toward Bellwether. My blood seemed to turn cold all at once. Someone is coming here, I told Malcolm. He stood and crossed to the office door, but I asked him to remain with the archive. Then I gathered my bank packet, stepped through the quiet dining room, and walked into the parking lot. Denise's car entered less than a minute later. She parked across two spaces, shut off the engine, and approached with her handbag pressed under her elbow. No greeting, no surprise. "You contacted Bellwether," she said. Her voice stayed low because two servers were unloading glassware near the kitchen entrance. I asked why my identity documents were attached to her reservation. Denise's eyes flicked toward the restaurant windows, searching for Evan or anyone else who mattered to her. "You went through private arrangements without speaking to your husband," she said. "That tells me everything about your priorities." I stayed silent then, and I still do not know whether silence protected me or simply gave her room. Have you ever let someone finish a cruel little speech because you needed to hear how far they would go? Write about it in the comments. Malcolm appeared briefly behind the glass, saw us, and returned to his office as I had requested. Denise waited until the servers carried their crate inside. Then she stepped close enough for me to smell peppermint over her rose perfume. Her right hand closed around my forearm, gentle in pressure and absolute in intention. "Evan was mine before he was yours," she said. "I gave up everything to raise him. A sensible wife would understand that his first duty is not negotiable." I looked down at her pale fingers and asked her to release me. She did, smoothing my sleeve afterward as though correcting a wrinkle. "You used my name," I said. Denise's mouth barely moved. "I made sure a family celebration happened. You make more than enough, yet you force Evan to ask for every kindness." The parking lot shimmered with rain, left in the pavement seams. Behind us, Malcolm closed his office blinds, leaving the merchant evidence locked inside. Denise now knew I had contacted Bellwether, and I knew the restaurant possessed copies of my stolen identity documents. She tilted her head, studying the bank packet under my arm, then delivered her lesson in a whisper meant for no witness. "A wife who wants to keep her marriage learns what belongs to her husband's mother and pays before she is asked." By Friday evening, the rain had thinned to silver threads beyond our townhouse windows. I set the bank evidence packet on the dining table and spread the profile logs beside Evan's untouched dinner. He stood with both ends braced on a chair, his wedding ring clicking against the wood. "My mother can be difficult," he said, but she would not steal from you. I showed him the redirected email, the 7 charges, and the available credit dropping by $9,639.60. His jaw tightened. Let's not make this bigger than it is. My throat closed around the answer. It was already bigger than our table. My phone rang with Leah's bank extension. I put her on video, using the number printed on her card, and saw the consultation room behind her. My card still rested on the examination tray beneath a clear evidence sleeve. Leah asked Evan to hold Denise's phone near the camera. He opened her family contact page instead, and Leah compared the last 4 digits of Denise's number with the recovery number in the profile log. They match. Then Evan read Denise's email aloud. It matched the address that had received my statements. The silence afterward lasted 9 seconds. I counted everyone, while Evan stared at his mother's smiling contact photograph. That could be an old emergency contact, he said, but his right hand had begun shaking. Leah turned her monitor so we could see the flagged access records. She identified the same mobile device across repeated profile changes and told us the device signature aligned with the phone Evan had just displayed. I need the exact date on each disputed event, she said. I read them from the packet while she entered my answers. When she finished, Leah lifted my card from the tray, sealed it in a tamper-evident envelope, and handed it through the consultation room door to the bank's secure evening courier. Then she carried her laptop downstairs to the call center without ending our video session. Evan lowered himself into a chair. I asked whether Denise had ever discussed my credit card with him. No, he said too quickly. I waited. His eyes moved toward the printer in our small office, then back to me. That movement frightened me more than the denial. He admitted that Denise had told him I was refusing to help with their utility bills, condominium assessments, and medical expenses. She had said I controlled our money and made him beg for ordinary kindness. Evan had believed enough of it to send recurring transfers without telling me. He logged into his checking account, downloaded the history, and printed every payment. The pages landed warm in his hands. He laid the transfer printout beside Leah's logs. The total was $7,200. My palms went damp against the table edge. You sent this secretly? I asked. Evan rubbed his thumb over one transfer until the paper buckled. He said Denise always called after deposits cleared, sometimes crying, sometimes warning that I would make him abandon her. I thought I was keeping the peace, he said. I looked at the 6 larger car charges totaling $9,616.20, then at his transfers. The documented household loss was $16,839.60. Peace had been expensive, and I had never been invited to purchase it knowingly. The courier arrived while Leah remained on the line. I accepted the sealed envelope at our door, checked the tracking code against the one Leah read to me, and carried it back to the dining room. Under her instruction, I opened it, inspected the card, and slid it into my wallet. Leah said Denise's device now had to be treated as the source of the account takeover, not merely an emergency contact. Evan covered his mouth with one hand. She used your identity, he said, his voice stripped of argument. Leah documented his statement, confirmed that she was now working from the bank call center, and told us the fraud affidavit would be ready Saturday. After the call, Evan searched his messages with Denise. His fingers stopped, then hovered over the screen as if touching it might burn him. He turned the phone toward me. Denise had sent the message after learning I questioned the birthday spending. It did not mention bills, fear, or need. It asked, "Before tomorrow, find out how much available room Mara still has on that card." Saturday's late afternoon light fell across the dining table in narrow gold bars. I had slept for 3 hours and packed one overnight bag without deciding whether it meant anything. The bank packet remained open beside Evan's transfer printout. At 4:12, Leah called from the bank's weekend call center and send the fraud affidavit through the secure portal. I opened it on my laptop while she verified each disputed transaction aloud. 7 posted charges. The bellwether verification for $23.40. 6 larger charges. 1 redirected email address. 1 matching device. My hand cramped before I reached the signature box, but I signed my full name without lifting the pen. Leah watched through video as I dated the affidavit and held each page to the camera. This states that you did not authorize Denise Vale to access, alter, or use the account, she said. I confirmed it. Evan stood by the kitchen counter, pale and unshaven, listening to language that left him nowhere comfortable to hide. Leah uploaded the signed copy, marked the physical original for preservation, and asked what we expected at Bellwether. I told her Denise still believed that the card would guarantee her birthday dinner. Leah warned me that locking it would block the authorization rather than erase the existing fraud. That is exactly what I need documented, I said. Her fingers paused over her keyboard, then resumed. I called Malcolm using the number he had written on the restaurant packet. He answered from his office, and I heard the steel cabinet open with a metallic scrape. He confirmed that the merchant evidence packet still contained the reservation history, processor correspondence, and copies of the identity documents submitted under my name. I asked him to bring it to the townhouse so we could establish one continuous record before dinner. Malcolm locked his office, placed the packet in a document case, and drove over. When I opened our door 25 minutes later, he held the case against his chest and said, "Let the record show that these materials have not been left unattended." At the table, Malcolm removed the packet and passed it directly to me. I numbered every section in blue ink: bank profile logs, statements, disputed charges, Evans transfers, Denise's messages, Bellwether's reservation archive, identity documents, and the signed affidavit. I built an index with dates rather than accusations. The pages aligned chronologically so cleanly that my skin prickled. First came the profile changes, then redirected statements, then charges, then Denise's question about available credit, and finally the restaurant guarantee. What had felt like separate humiliations became one sequence. I slid the merchant evidence into the binder behind its number tab and added the original affidavit after Leah confirmed that its digital copy was secure. Evan sat opposite me, turning his phone face down and face up. I asked him to repeat the plan. He would take my card from me before we left. At Bellwether, he would behave as if he still accepted Denise's version of our marriage. When the check arrived, he would use the phrase she liked whenever she wanted me embarrassed. His mouth tightened before he said it. Freeloader. Denise had used the insult in messages about me, and Evan had once dismissed it as her sense of humor. Now he would say it himself before attempting the payment. Malcolm looked from him to me, understanding that the declined authorization had to occur without the restaurant accepting fraudulent funds. Would you stay long enough to force the truth into daylight, or leave before the next betrayal? Right, stay or leave. What happened when that card reached the terminal would answer a question I had been afraid to ask. Leah asked whether Evan understood that the card would be locked before it left my hand. He said yes. Malcolm stated for the record that Bellwether anticipated a disputed payment attempt and that management would preserve the terminal response, the check, and the reservation file. I opened my banking app while all three watched. The card image glowed blue on my phone. My thumb hovered over lock card and sweat gathered beneath the case. Once I pressed it, a confirmation banner replaced the available credit figure. Leah noted the time in her case record. Malcolm repeated it for his own notes. Evan flinched at the small electronic chime. I removed the physical card from my wallet and held it between two fingers. Evan did not reach immediately. After tonight, I may not come home with you, I said. His eyes rose to mine, and the muscles beside his mouth pulled tight. He asked whether I had already decided to leave him. I told him I had decided only where I would sleep. The overnight bag near the stairs was visible from his chair. For once, he did not ask me to keep the problem small. He said that if he changed the plan to protect Denise, I should give Leah and Malcolm every message he had ever sent about the transfers. Malcolm returned to the chronology, checking each index entry against his copy of the reservation archive. He signed a receipt showing that he had delivered the merchant materials into my custody, then photographed the binder's numbered contents. Leah verified the affidavit's case reference and confirmed that the expected bellwether attempt had been added to the bank record. I fastened the final divider and tested every ring with my fingertips. Nothing slipped loose. Malcolm closed his empty document case, left through the front door, and called from his car to confirm he was returning to Bellwether. Leah ended the secure call only after I showed her the locked card banner once more. At 5:48, Evan put on his jacket. I carried the index binder against my ribs and lifted the overnight bag with my free hand. In the entryway, the house smelled of cold coffee and the cedar polish Denise had given us as an housewarming present. I handed Evan the locked card. His fingers closed around it slowly, and he placed it alone in the inside pocket of his jacket. Then he checked his reflection in the hall mirror, practicing the blank expression he used with difficult insurance clients. I opened the front door, felt the late spring air touch my face, and closed the binder with one sharp snap. "Do not improvise," I told him. Bellwether's dining room glowed amber against the blue-gray Portland evening. Cutlery touched china with small expensive clicks. Denise was waiting beside the entrance after crossing the parking lot, one hand resting on her gold watch as though we had kept her from her own coronation. She studied the binder under my arm, then Evan's jacket pocket. "You brought paperwork to dinner?" she asked. I said it contained something I needed to show her after dessert. Her fingers went still. Evan pulled out her chair, and I caught the silence between them, the old silence in which he surrendered before she had to ask. Denise ordered without opening the menu. Oysters, steak, 2 sides, wine, and a chocolate soufflé with a candle arrived in measured waves. She ate slowly, praising the room loudly enough for neighboring tables to hear. Ivan barely touched his food. I counted 6 times that his hand moved toward his inside pocket, checking the card. When the final plate was cleared, the server placed the $500 check beside him. Denise leaned back and watched me with bright, expectant eyes. I pushed my water glass aside. "Split the bill?" I asked. Her smile disappeared as neatly as a light switching off. "What do you mean, split the bill? I gave you my card at home so you could pay like a real man," Denise said. She pointed at Ivan's pocket, not realizing what she had admitted. My throat tightened, but I kept my hands flat on the table. Ivan looked at me, then drew out my blue card. "Freeloader," he scoffed, giving the word the hard, contemptuous edge Denise expected. She nodded in approval. He pressed my card to the portable terminal. Its cheerful beep cut through the room. A red message appeared. Ivan set the machine in its tray with my card still beside it, exactly as Malcolm had instructed. Malcolm stepped from the corridor leading to the manager's office before Denise could reach for the terminal. He took the check from the table, read the display, and said, "This transaction is declined, but that is not your largest problem, Mrs. Vale." The color drained from her face. Malcolm printed the decline slip and looked toward me. I lifted the binder onto the table, opened it before Denise, and turned to the first number divider. Then Malcolm guided all 3 of us through a panel door into Bellwether's private alcove, carrying the check while Ivan brought the terminal tray. The dining room music softened behind the closed door, leaving only the ventilation fan and Denise's shallow breathing. I laid out the bank profile logs, the merchant archive, Evan's transfer printout, and my signed fraud affidavit. The first unauthorized charge was Bellwether's $23.40 verification. 6 more totaled $9,616.20. Delivery records tied furnishings, association payments, and designer purchases to Denise's condominium. Together with the verification, the posted card fraud was $9,639.60. Evans' transfers added $7,200, bringing the documented household loss to $16,839.60. Malcolm slid the declined slip across the table. I punched it, opened the rings, and fastened it behind the terminal record. Denise called the deliveries gifts I had forgotten approving. I turned one page. The reservation email had included scans of my driver's license and passport page, sent from Denise's address. In the message, she described me as medically confused and warned Bellwether not to accept any later denial from me. A second paragraph asked whether my identity documents could remain attached to the guest profile for future family occasions. Cold spread from my ribs into my hands. It was not one dinner or 6 charges. She had built herself a reusable version of me. Malcolm asked who wrote the email. Denise pressed both palms to the table and said, "I wrote it because someone had to make arrangements." Evan's chair scraped backward. He told her the card had been locked, the attempt documented, and the meeting arranged with Malcolm and Leah. Denise stared at him as understanding arrived. "You helped her trap me?" she asked. Evan said she had copied Mara's documents from our emergency folder while house sitting and had redirected the account email before claiming Mara withheld money. Denise answered that a sensible wife would not force a mother to secure her own future. Evan's fingers shook as he separated a small silver key from his ring. He looked at it once, the key to her Park District condominium, then laid it beside the open binder. At 7:30 on Saturday evening, Malcolm folded the $500 check lengthwise and told Denise that Bellwether was withdrawing service and preserving every record for the bank investigation. Denise rose too quickly, knocking her chair against the alcove wall. She demanded my binder, insisting that family financial matters did not belong in a fraud file. I closed my hand over the rings. "The car complaints proceed, and so will the identity theft report," I said. "You do not get to rename them." Malcolm asked whether Bellwether could retain the originals. I told him no, but he could keep the authenticated copies already secured in his archive. Denise turned on Evan. She reminded him that she had raised him alone and paid every bill when no one else cared whether he ate. Evan's face tightened, but he did not pick up the condominium key. "You used that sacrifice as a lifetime invoice," he said. "I paid because you told me Mara was controlling the money. You knew I would believe you." Denise reached for his sleeve. He stepped back. I accepted that movement for what it was, a choice made late, under evidence, after my name and credit had already been used. It was real. It was not enough to make trust reappear on command. Malcolm opened the alcove door and asked Denise to accompany him to the exit. She refused until he said Bellwether would contact security if necessary. I lifted my card from the terminal tray, checked the last 4 digits, and slid it into my wallet. Then I removed the declined slip long enough to photograph both sides before fastening it back into the binder. The plastic sleeves smelled faintly of warm toner. I closed the rings, gathered every indexed packet against my chest, and followed as Malcolm escorted Denise past the dining room. Conversations dipped around us, then resumed in cautious fragments. At the host stand, Evan placed the condominium key inside a small envelope. Malcolm sealed it, wrote Denise's name across the front, and stored it beneath the counter for her to collect without further contact. He carried the folded check into his manager's office, placed it in a file drawer, and turned the lock. When he returned to the host stand, the key remained in his hand. Denise watched through the glass entry doors, her mouth a narrow line. Malcolm told me he understood that I retained the original affidavit, transfer records, bank evidence, and merchant documents. I confirmed it and tightened my grip on the binder. Evan stopped me in the vestibule. He said he would cooperate with Leah. provide every transfer message, and support every formal complaint. Then he asked whether he could come with me. My overnight bag pulled at my shoulder, and my palm was damp against its handle. "No," I said, "I'm staying elsewhere while this proceeds." He whispered that he had finally chosen me. I told him I saw the choice, but support now did not erase the months he had financed Denise or the nights he had asked me to doubt my own arithmetic. Separation was not punishment. It was the only distance in which I could hear my own judgment clearly. What would you call trust that appears only after the paperwork becomes undeniable? If this family silence felt familiar, follow along. These stories are for the people who have been asked to ignore what their own hands were holding. I walked to the front entrance with my wallet secured inside my bag and the binder braced against my ribs. Malcolm remained at the host stand beside the sealed key envelope. Outside, Denise stood on the sidewalk under the white restaurant lights, alone and furious, waiting for a ride she had not planned to need. Evan stayed in the vestibule between us. I pushed through the front door into the cool Portland night, while, behind the opposite glass door, he watched his mother turn away. For the first time, neither of us followed her. At the curb, my rideshare arrived before Denise's. I loaded my bag without looking back. On Monday, Leah submitted the merchant archive with my report. The bank issued provisional credits, then made them permanent after Bellwether authenticated the records. I froze my credit, replaced my passport, and removed Denise from every emergency contact and account permission. Evan turned over his messages and repaid the $7,200 from his separate savings. 3 months later, Denise pleaded guilty to identity theft and fraudulent use of a credit card. The court ordered the restitution, probation, and no financial contact with me. Bellwether returned her uncashed check through her attorney and banned her from the restaurant. Evan and I spent 6 months separated. Counseling made him honest, but honesty could not make me feel safe beside him. We divorced without a fight. He accepted that cooperation was not the same as repair. A year later, the final restitution payment cleared. I removed the declined slip from the binder and placed it in a locked archive with a case closure letter. Then I closed the rings one last time. Denise had tried to create a version of me she could spend. What survived was the woman who kept the receipts and finally believed herself.